What up? It's your boy T-Bear here in the reaction. So I'm gonna get started on the franchise since Halloween's coming up this Saturday. I want to make sure I get every single one by Halloween, unless I gotta do a double up or end up doing one on the day after Halloween. Who knows? But that was a lot. My bad. We're gonna get to the first of the series, and this is based off way back. I get asked which series I should do a reaction to. They got saturated. They want to keep up with the newer stuff coming up with Dead Meat, such as the newer series you got, such as Carrie, Wide Wrong Turn, and the what was it, the Firefly trilogy, which I'm done with that already, and I'm trying to get into the Wrecking Quarantine series as well too, along with other movies that came out recently though. So other than that, we're here to do a kill count reaction to the very first creme de la creme classic, cult classic horror film, Texas Chainsaw Massacre. The dawn of Leatherface, like when they say Mortal Kombat. So yeah, let's see Dead Meat takes on the classic right here. It came out way back in 1974. Well, I heard this ever came out on I'm like, wow, they had a movie like this in the 70s. That's crazy. But probably won't be as crazy graphic, you know. Who knows? But let's get it.
Welcome to the Kill Count, where we tally up the victims in all our favorite horror movies. I'm James
Hello,
A. Denise,
James.
and today we're finally looking at the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, released in 1974. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre has become the most requested franchise on this channel, and it's not hard to see why. The original film is one of the most influential horror movies of all time, and came out before most of the other landmark films of the genre, including Halloween and just barely Black Christmas.
I just thought about that too. That was like before. That was like the early slasher, because I ain't thinking about it coming out this early though. I'm thinking Halloween's like the dawn of slasher, but this was really the dawn of slashers in a way.
Now, as amazing as the original Chainsaw Massacre is, in fact, Chelsea cites it as her favorite horror movie, I'm not sure if everyone who requested this franchise understands just how messed up it gets. And I don't only mean in terms of quality, even though plenty of these movies are straight up stinkers. Texas Chainsaw's continuity is severely convoluted, rivaled only by the clusterfuck that is the Halloween franchise. Get this, the original has 3 sequels, although parts 3 and 4 have completely different characters and storylines. The 2003 reboot with Jessica Biel was followed by a 2006 prequel, The Beginning. 2013's Texas Chainsaw 3D is a direct sequel to the original 74 film. And finally, 2018's Leatherface is a prequel to the original that maintains continuity with the 2013 3D film. Did you get all that? If not, don't worry. There will be plenty of time for review as we spend the next 2 months with this series, during which you'll see a bunch of different Leatherfaces, a whole bunch of people jumping through windows, and some familiar A-list actors along the way. But before all that craziness, we have the original. Co-written and directed by Tobe Hooper, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre has a certain reputation that it honestly doesn't...
My fiance, my wife is looking at our wedding video, but I'm trying to get this done for y'all, so let's get it.
Deserve. Because I'm sure when you hear the name, you think stereotypical super bloody slasher, right? This movie is not that. Not at all. It's decidedly tame when it comes to gore, and to be honest, it's more of an art house film than a...
I figured that, like I said, it's early 70s. It's mid to early 70s, so yeah, I figured that.
Friday the 13th type slasher. In fact, this movie is the subject of so many academic and analytical reviews that Chelsea devoted an entire episode of the Dead Meat podcast to it earlier this week. Do yourself a favor and check it out, since the kill count only provides jokes and some behind-the-scenes info. The podcast is where you'll get the fancy intellectual stuff. Going into this movie for the first time, you should probably set your expectations accordingly. The first half is surprisingly slow-paced, focusing mostly on setting the tone and relishing in Daniel Pearl's gorgeous cinematography. When things finally explode...
I'm back. My wife is looking at our resident video because our photographer and videographer sending the videos over, so she called me over to see something. So we're probably gonna be a lot of pausing. I do apologize. I want to get this out for y'all. Anyway, let's keep going.
explode in the final act, it's not a hack and slash kill fest, but rather a soul-crushing nightmare of depravity at the hands of this franchise's bedrock, the sadistic Sawyer family. For those of you unfamiliar with this franchise, you may be surprised to learn that it revolves around a family of cannibals. During the series, we'll see the Sawyers go through half a dozen iterations, always changing family members and often changing their name. But the one consistent element of these movies, and the boy that you've all been waiting to see, is the infamous chainsaw-wielding, sweet, simple Leatherface. He's sometimes scared and confused, other times a bit more outright mean, and at one point we'll even see him fall in love. But most of the time, Leatherface is a bit less evil than other killers like Michael or Jason, because he's usually being taken advantage of and ordered around by the rest of his much more malicious family members. Now, with all that table setting out of the way, let's finally start the meal and get to the Texas Chainsaw Massacre's kills. The movie begins with the title Crawl, read by Night Court's John Larroquette in his first ever role.
For them, an idyllic summer afternoon drive became a nightmare.
It implies that the movie was based on true events, and although some aspects of Leatherface and his family were loosely based on Ed Gein, the butcher of Plainfield who would make furniture out of stolen corpses, the plot of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre is entirely fictional. After establishing the setting,
when I first heard about that being based on a true story, I'm like, are you serious? Then I looked at the story, I'm like, okay, it's still crazy, but not as crazy as this story is. Thank God.
Of 73, we see flashbulb pictures of a crime scene with a sound effect that would come to be iconic. It's used to great effect here, which will not be the case in some of the sequels. The crime scene snapshots lead into a strangely beautiful long shot of a desecrated corpse in a cemetery, as a radio broadcast reports a recent spree of unsolved grave robbings near the fictional town of Newt, Texas. This intro is all very understated and eerie, as is the title card and the opening credits. Like, seriously, is that the friggin' sun? What does that mean? It feels like I'm back in film school, but in a good way. We come out of all of that onto an armadillo in Texas. Always thought it was pronounced Amarillo. Driving down these Texan roads is a van full of youngsters.
That wreck got a shell on it. Or your Wu-Tang American Saga would know what I meant by that.
This 30-year-old Disco Stew looking dude who's pretending that he's still in his 20s. Don't worry, buddy, I can relate. Horror's first ever final girl, Sally Hardesty, is traveling to her grandfather's grave to make sure it hasn't been robbed as part of that spree the radio was talking about. While a local takes her to check on it, her wheelchair-bound brother Franklin has to hang back and listen to an old-fashioned horror harbinger of doom.
I see things.
Oh yeah? What do you see, pal? Besides the bottom of that bottle. On the way to their old family home, the kids pass a slaughterhouse where Franklin says their grandpa used to work. He goes into detail about the cattle killing procedures to this dude Kirk and his girlfriend Pam, who's the kind of gal who will ask you what your sign is 5 minutes after she meets you.
Saturn's a bad influence. It's just particularly a bad influence now because it's in retrograde.
They see a hitchhiker on the side of the road and decide to pick him up because it's too damn hot for a person to be just walking around here. The hitchhiker, played with a terrifying unstableness by Edwin Neal, says his whole family works in the meat industry, and inside his little neck knapsack, he's got the pictures to prove it. Those are, yeah, real nice guy. He ends up grabbing Franklin's pocket knife right out of his hand and uses it to cut himself, all while some wonderfully jolly music plays on the radio.
What?
Aren't road trips?
Negro, I would have kicked his ass out the van just for that. But go on.
Edwin Neal's memorable performance as the hitchhiker was modeled after his nephew, who was diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia. Though, as he noted in an interview about it, his nephew was never once violent. Lots of horror movies, this series especially, use people with abnormal psychologies as villains, but it's always important to remember that in real life, those people are more often victims than perpetrators of violence. The hitchhiker takes a picture of Franklin and tries to force him to buy it.
$2. It's a good picture.
But when the kids say no thanks, he gets upset and lights the picture on fire with some gunpowder. As if that wasn't bad enough, he then takes out a straight razor and cuts Franklin's arm with it. That finally gets them to pull over and kick the hitchhiker out, and the kids drive away as he marks their van with his blood and blows raspberries in their wake.
I would have kicked him off the
Kids should have been more careful. You're living in a post-Charlie Manson world here. They pull up to a gas station / barbecue joint and ask the proprietor if he knows where they can find their old family home.
You boys don't want to go mess around the old house?
Yo, dudes, you don't know where I want to mess around. The station is out of gas, though, so the only things they leave with are a bag full of barbecue and a near-empty tank. They get to their old family house and start exploring it, with Sally showing the others her old room. Disco Stu flirting with the final girl. Poor Franklin's unable to come upstairs though, which makes him feel pretty left out and leads to him also blowing raspberries in frustration, kinda like the hitchhiker.
If I have any more fun today, I don't think I'm gonna be able to take it.
What I love about Franklin though is that he's only partly sympathetic, because he's also super whiny and obnoxious as all hell. In fact, actor Paul Partain, rest in peace, decided to stay in character for the entire shoot, so the rest of the cast ended up avoiding him on set.
Unfortunately, Franklin was such a whiny bastard. I was afraid if I ever took him off that I couldn't get him back, and so I kept him on.
Yes, it was real effective. We're ready to kill each other.
Oh, shit.
Pam and Kirk head out to an old watering hole, only to find it's been dried up. But then they hear an engine running at a nearby farmhouse and head over there to see if there's any spare gas that they can buy for their van. Judging by the car park they find in the backyard, these kids might just be the luckiest travelers in all of Texas. Or at least that's probably what they're thinking right now. They go around to the front porch, where Kirk finds a nasty tooth that he puts into Pam's hand. She don't want no tooth fairy money and storms off, while Kirk's manly knock accidentally opens the front door. Not too much to look at inside, unless you're a big fan of taxidermy and Twin Peaks. Oh, and pig squealing? Kirk happens to love all three of those things, so he steps inside for a fun time, only for this to happen.
Oh, shit. Ooh!
Just as with livestock, the first hammer hit doesn't kill Kirk instantly, so Leatherface has to hit him again before taking him back to the kitchen with an iconic sliding door slam. Game over, Kirk. Outside, Pam notices that Kirk has disappeared, and we get another iconic shot that follows her from a low angle as she slowly approaches the house. This shot was a last-minute idea by cinematographer Daniel Pearl that the producers tried to nix since it wasn't on the shot list. Tobe Hooper overrode the producers, and it's since become one of the most famous shots from the film, even if actress Terry McMinn wasn't a big fan of it at first.
And then I saw in CinemaScope and Technicolor my cheeks right in the screen, and I was completely horrified for years.
She has since come around to it, though.
I'm laughing now because now I think it's great. Put it back up there.
Just like Kirk, Pam also lets herself into the house, which kind of makes this a home invasion movie if you look at it from Leatherface's perspective. Especially when Pam starts tripping all over the place and trashing his stuff. Come on, Pam, this is their very important chicken room. They keep their best bones in there. And don't even think about sitting on that Skelefuton. That thing's on loan from Guillermo del Toro. All of the crazy bone art in this room and throughout the movie was made by production designer Robert Burns, who also taxidermied an actual armadillo corpse for that shot in the beginning of the film.
God.
Bob Burns was one of the most pivotal players in this movie's success. He would literally drive around to local farms gathering actual animal bones to make all these Sawyer family props. Without him and his creepy decorations, this movie wouldn't be half as effective as it is.
Thing.
After taking a long, slow-ass motherfucking look at all the horrors surrounding her, Pam finally decides to go on and get, only to run into Leatherface on her way out. Yet another classic moment occurs when he grabs her on the porch and heaves her back into the house. And it only gets worse for Pam when he takes her to the kitchen and uses a meat hook to hang her up. So many animal carcasses. Although it's brutal and terrifying, it's shot in a surprisingly tame way, which is also the case when Leatherface revs his chainsaw up and gets to carving into Kirk's corpse. None of this is pleasant, but it's a whole lot less explicit than you'd probably expect. That'll change in the sequels. When Kirk and Pam are gone longer than expected, Jerry offers to go
that explains why the sequels are explicit. So yeah.
Look for them and travels through the woods as the sun goes down. Disco Stu, walking into the sunset. He gets to the old house and also comes around front, where he proves that B&E is just part and parcel for all these rude-ass kids, or 30.
I literally think, this way he's walking, I was expecting like a classic disco song playing while he's walking. Yeah, like.
He heads back into Leatherface's playroom, and although the meat hook is empty, there are sounds coming from the freezer. He opens it to find Pam. Wait, why is she still? Wasn't she just... Oh, there she is. Get on up, girl. One of the best things about this movie is the sound design, from all the industrial sounds that Tobe Hooper recorded in his own home to the sudden instances of loudness like that one, and this one. Leatherface runs in and smashes Jerry's skull to kill him nice and quick. Disco Stew, hopping on the kill count. With Jerry taken care of, Leatherface puts Pam back in the icebox. And that's actually the last time we see her, so I have no choice but to put her on the kill count now. Maybe she froze to death in there? I don't know what to tell you, man. Regardless, Leatherface is getting sick of playing defense here. Well, where are all these darn kids even coming from? Gosh, I moved to the countryside to get away from hooliganry. The late Gunnar Hansen played Leatherface so perfectly in this movie that it's easy to feel bad for the poor guy. Just keep looking at your messed up teeth, Leatherface. It'll all be okay, my sweet boy. Since Jerry had the keys in his pocket, the Hardesty siblings are stranded by the van, so they end up having to set off into the darkness to find him. Man, it is super freaking dark in these woods. Franklin, could you please shine that flashlight somewhere useful?
Stop. Stop.
Oh, it's fucking Leatherface! And he saws into Franklin like a sapling, carving the poor boy's body up right there in his wheelchair while his sister watches and screams like a mad woman. Fun fact, the blood sprays here came from Hooper and makeup artist Dottie Pearl crouching down on either side of the wheelchair and spitting fake blood out of their mouths onto Leatherface. Sally eventually gets the sense to run away and heads through the thickets to the only light she sees, hoping it'll bring her salvation from the chainsaw-wielding maniac on her heels. But of course, the light ends up being Leatherface's funhouse of horrors, and he don't exactly need a key to get through that front door. While he saws into it, Sally runs upstairs and into a back room, where she finds a corpse or two sitting in chairs, unable to offer her any advice. We'll see a lot of dried up corpses of unknown people in the Chainsaw series, and I won't be including them on the kill count. It's fine, don't worry about it. Rather worry about poor Sally, since Leatherface is finally through the door. Sally's not done running though, and doesn't even hesitate to crash through the upstairs window and fall to the ground to escape her would-be killer. We start the second lap of Sally's final girl circuit, which once again takes us through the haunted forest. The finish line of this lap is that gas station they had stopped at earlier. Sally bursts through a side door and falls onto the floor, but Leatherface doesn't seem to follow her inside. Instead, the old man from the gas station sits her up and tells her everything's gonna be okay. He'll go get his truck and take her to a hospital. While he's out, Sally notices the sizzling meat this guy's got cooking, which, you know, wouldn't be all that bad on its own. Except when he comes back, he's sporting an awfully creepy smile on his face. Oh, and also, he's got a human-sized sack and some rope. Yeah, them some red flags, girl. Sally wisely grabs a knife to defend herself with, but everybody knows that broomstick beats knife. Oh, and
shit.
Sally. Broomstick also beats Sally. The old man, who's known as the cook in this movie, but will come to be known as Drayton Sawyer, knocks Sally out and ties her up, then bags her and drags her into his truck. Man, poor Sally. Really out of the frying pan and into the cook fire with this one.
I hope you're not too uncomfortable down there.
Well, I would be if you stopped poking me with that broomstick, dick. The cook / Drayton Sawyer is an absolutely loathsome motherfucker, and he's played brilliantly by Jim Sedow, who was pretty much the only experienced actor in this movie. As Drayton approaches the Sawyer house, he sees the hitchhiker in his native state walking down the side of the road. Drayton gets out of the truck and yells some slurs at the hitchhiker before giving him the old broomstick beatdown in another of this movie's brilliant and beautiful shots. God damn, I love this cinematography. They get to the house with Drayton still hooting and hollering at the hitchhiker, because it turns out these dudes are brothers to each other, and to Leatherface.
Look what your brother did to that door!
It's weird, I always used to think that Drayton was the hitchhiker and Leatherface's dad, but I guess he's just the oldest brother. And right now, he's taking that brotherly broomstick to his youngest sibling, Leatherface. Leave him alone, Dre. All he wants to do right now is dress and sound like Mrs. Doubtfire. The hitchhiker, who will come to be known as Nubbins, ties up Sally and discovers her identity, much to his delight.
I thought you was in a hurry.
Yeah, Sally's in a real bad place now. And if you don't want to watch chaotic misery inflicted on a captive girl for 10 minutes straight, well, I got some bad news for you, friend. Before the festivities can begin, though, you better get Grandpa and bring him downstairs. Yeah, set that dusty boy right at the head of the table. The Sawyer boys cut open Sally's hand and tell their granddad to take this, her blood, and drink of it. And he does. Man, I thought that dude was dead. But turns out, all he needed was some teenager blood, and he turns into the Six Flags guy. The Sawyer bus is coming, and everybody's jumping. Grandpa Sawyer, the character, is supposedly 124 years old, but he was played by John Dugan, who was only 19 at the time.
Wow.
The character's incredible makeup, which took 5 to 7 hours to apply, was done by Dr. W.E. Barnes in his one and only film credit. His actual job was as a plastic surgeon. Also, if you dig Grandpa Sawyer's dance moves here, you'll be happy to know John Dugan can still do them nearly 40 years later. Sally passes out, and when she comes to, she finds herself in the middle of a fucking nightmare. Her hands tied down to some other hands, and her shrieks of suffering only mocked and echoed by her tormentors. Whoa, and is that a face lamp up top? Yo, look at that face lamp!
Shut your mouth.
Well, sorry, Drayton. If you didn't want me commenting on that face lamp, maybe don't have a face lamp. This miserable dinner scene is the most horrific part of the movie by far, and was also the most torturous thing to film. They shot for over 24 hours straight, although there is some dispute as to the exact number.
That proved to be like a 27-hour shooting day.
26 hours.
It was like a 27-hour shoot.
Still!
36 hours straight we shot.
Since they filmed in July in the middle of Texas, with the windows blacked out and a bunch of film lights all over the place, internal temperatures reached 120 degrees, cooking the meat they were using as props and making plenty of people sick.
Boy, was it hot, and the meat got rotten in a hurry. I never did get ill physically, where a lot of people did. They run outside, come back in.
There was a moment during the film during the dinner scene when I went out and threw up.
Sally tries to beg Drayton for mercy, but that goes about as well as you'd expect it to.
You can make him stop doing shit.
The hitchhiker says that his older brother can't do shit, because he's just the cook, and it's the younger bros who have to do all the distasteful killing work.
I just can't take no pleasure in killing.
To get out of this table set hellscape, Sally even offers up the only thing she has.
I'll do anything you want.
But this plea of desperation falls on deaf ears. These men aren't motivated by usual desires. They're just sadistic cannibals who take pleasure in other people's pain. You'll find no sympathy from them, Sally, no matter how hard you look with your eyes. Damn, you're looking hard too, huh? Like blood vessel hard. Drayton tells his younger brothers to get on with it and kill her, but the hitchhiker decides that Grandpa's the man for the job.
You always said he's the best. He's the best, all right. My old grandpa's the best killer there ever was.
They arm him with a hammer and send Sally into a screaming pile of jump cuts. Then they untie her and bring her over to Grandpa's killing bucket. And what follows is a super darkly comedic scene, where Grandpa, who's supposedly the best at killing, can't even hold the hammer in his hand long enough to strike Sally. Tobe Hooper would try to focus more on dark humor like this in Texas Chainsaw 2, which I think he does to pretty good effect. With Drayton cheering him on and Leatherface all but doing the work for him, Grandpa finally starts landing blows on the back of Sally's head. But when the hitchhiker tries to take over, Sally seizes the opportunity and gets away from them, once again crashing through a window to escape like a baller. She's been tortured by the Sawyers so long it's already freaking morning, but she wastes no time limping down the road with the hitchhiker already in hot pursuit and his younger brother Leatherface rushing out to join him. The hitchhiker catches up to Sally and slashes at her back, playing with his prey long enough that she manages to get out to the main road. Right as a semi-truck rolls up to them, Sally gets away from the hitchhiker, who's not quite as lucky and instead gets the gauge brake treatment by this big rig's big ass tires. For this death, they filmed him getting hit by the truck in reverse, a real simple trick, and then obviously used a dummy for the undertread body. Sally watches the truck pull over, and although the driver gets out to help her, he nopes right back into the cab after seeing Leatherface and his chainsaw. For some reason, instead of driving away, he and Sally climb out of the truck's passenger side door. I seriously don't know why they did that, but at least the truck driver grabs a monkey wrench on his way out so he can ask Leatherface knock knock. Hit you in the head with a monkey wrench. That causes Leatherface to fall and cut up his own leg, poor boy. But he's back up in no time as Sally and the truck driver haul ass down the street. A blue pickup truck joins the madness and pulls over long enough for Sally to hop inside. And just don't think about the semi-truck driver. Some say he's still running down the street to this very day. Sally is driven away from Leatherface in a few more infamous shots, some of which are featured in my extended intro, and her terror turns into glee as she realizes that she's finally escaped the unspeakable horrors wrought by this crazed chainsaw murderer and his sadistic family of cannibals. How many people did the Sawyers invite to their dinner party? Let's find out and get to the numbers. 5 people died in the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which might be lower than you expected, but I tried to warn you about that up top. The victims consisted of 4 men and only 1 woman, giving us a mostly blueberry meat pie. And with a runtime of 83 minutes, that left us with a kill on average every 16.6 minutes. I'll give the Golden Chainsaw for coolest kill to Kirk. It kicks off the movie's kill count and comes out of nowhere, and I love the way it's done in mostly silence. Dull Machete for lamest kill will go to, Jerry, I guess? I actually think all these kills are effective, but if I include the meat hooking as part of Pam's death, then I think it's gotta go to Jerry. And that's it. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre came out in 1974, and was actually banned in the UK for 23 years. Tobe Hooper would make the drastically different sequel a dozen years later, which I'll be looking at next week. But until then, I'm James A. Janice. This has been The Kill Count. Thanks a lot for watching this.
Alright. There we go. Texas Chainsaw. It was crazy. Now I mean, and like I said, I thought like, how would they have a crazy movie like this in the 70s? But as you can see, it's not as graphic. One like the graphic part, truthfully, with me was Nubbin getting ran over by a truck. But other than that, and the other one was the dude getting the slam. The way he was shaking it was slightly gore. But other than that, everything was like surprisingly subtle. But then again, it was like 70s. I don't think 70s was a year was gore time. So I expect to be allegory because 86, that's like the middle of the 80s, and I always said that 80s is a year of gore with anything, whether it's horror movies or action movies as well too. So yeah, other than that, this was good though. Regardless, it was good. Like, it gave me a good perspective of the origin of Leatherface. Like me, I heard about Texas Chainsaw Massacre and Leatherface here and there by pop culture, but to actually see it in the way and the kill counts and all that. First, I'm glad to see the kill counts actual movie because I'll probably be like, what the fuck, when can we get on with it? When I watch the movie, because probably will be like, like he said, slow moment and all that till to get to the kills. Like, oh shit, and like it's not that many kills in there anyway. So yeah. So other than that, tomorrow if I have time, I'll try to do Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2. Squeeze it in some kind of way, and everything other days I'll try to squeeze it in unless I gotta do something. So other than that, if you like my reaction, like, share, subscribe my YouTube channel. It's your boy T-Bird signing off. One love.